So sacrifice to me is about smelling the small stuff that probably come into my life. Sacrifice, if I go back a bit, sacrifice when I was growing up. We had an interesting childhood where lots of sacrifices had to be made, so we had to smell a lot of small stuff as we were growing up. So then as we grew up, I decided I wanted to be a teacher. So I went to work for a while. I had to sacrifice, I had to leave school when I was in junior, which in those days was grade 10. And then I went off had to go to work because I hadn't done senior. So I'd sacrificed work and I had to go and do senior by night school. So yes, I will put it in this, I'm going to say, Eleanor, I will put it in, because then I made a big sacrifice where I did enter the convent. And that was a sacrifice because my father didn't accept that fact. He kind of not disowned me, but he didn't accept the fact that this is what I wanted to do. So sacrifice in that instance was, well, giving up. I didn't ever know whether I would be able to go back into my home again where I lived, because of I chose a teaching order, and in those days you were kind of not enclosed, but you couldn't go out. So that was a sacrifice in itself. So I taught in many places around the diocese. Sacrificed a lot of my personal stuff as well, because in those days life was tough. So we didn't have a car to drive, we caught buses and that. So they were the little things, and to me, looking back, they were the small stuff that I kept smelling along my journey. I was a religious for many moons. I was principal when Eleanor went to, her family went to school. I love those type of experiences because there was sacrifice in that, because I was in charge, and yet I had to make sacrifices for myself and also the children that I had come in contact with over those years. I moved a lot through education, and then after 50 years in education I decided it was time to give back to the community. I came here interestingly enough, I came to support somebody who used to bring communion, and Eleanor can explain that later, to the Catholic people, just to help her out. And then when I retired and thought, what can I do to give back to the community, I started to volunteer here. So volunteer here for me, at the beginning, I had to change my head. My head was absolutely turned upside down, simply because education background, and if a kid in a school told me to whatever, I might say, I'll see you later in my office. So here, when the residents kind of would have inappropriate behaviour, I had to learn a new language, which was a completely different language to an educational language. So I started off 2 days a week, I then became 3 days a week, and now I'm 5 days a week. So the sacrifices in this role, well, I don't know whether they are sacrifices. It's me giving back, which I suppose is a sacrifice in itself. Me giving back to a community that I've come to love. I've been here 8 years now. I've come to love. I do activities with the residents, and sometimes I've got to come out of I'm an extrovert, but sometimes I've got to come right out, which is a sacrifice for me because I'm not that young anymore. But taking on this new role of pastoral care, which I love, lots of sacrifices. In the article that I just put in the bulletin in the newsletter this week, sometimes I don't have to say a word. Like this morning, there was a resident crying. She couldn't tell me what was wrong, so I just held her hand, sat there, gave her a little smile and a pat, and left. So the sacrifices in listening to the residents, sometimes they don't make sense, but I'm learning so much from what they give to me. It's like they're helping me grow as a person at my age, because I just see so much goodness in them. in how they live, how they don't understand sometimes. People with dementia, they live in a whole different world. And yet for me, it's part of my life now. I don't ever get up thinking, oh, I've got to go to Benevolent today. I get up saying, I've got to be there by 7:30 or something like that. So sacrifice in that instance is a sacrifice for me, but it's not, because I'm walking with these people every day. Hopefully me unencumbered by any baggage that I might carry, because it's not about me, it's about the residents.